You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, nutrition, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere, anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your hosts, Dr. Justin Marchegiani and Barris Harvey, as they answer your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, this is Dr. Justin Marchegiani, and welcome to another awesome episode of Beyond Wellness Radio. Again, we have a great show in store for you. Before, go to beyondwellnessradio.com. Click on the newsletter sign-up button. You can sign up for our newsletter and get show updates right in your inbox before anyone else. You can also click on the questions button and even speak questions live, and we'll be able to answer it on the air for you. You can also click on the write a review button. If you really enjoy the show, write us a review. Let us know on iTunes. Let the world know. Think of one person that would benefit from listening to this show and share it with them. Sharing is caring. Also, check out justinhealth.com, which is my personal site. Again, I have some complimentary functional medicine consults available. You can also sign up for the free thyroid series and female hormone series as well. You can also go to reallyhealthynow.com. That's Barris Harvey's website, where he has some great articles and blogs and videos for you there as well, and even some consultations. Again, we have an awesome show in store. Stay tuned. Hey there, it's Dr. Justin here with Beyond Wellness Radio, and we got Aaron Alexander from Align Method, and Aaron's website is aligntherapy.com. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, it was great. I was on your podcast a few weeks back, and I'm so stoked after learning a little bit more about what you're all about to get some of that information out to my listeners.
Yeah, sure. So what would you like to know? Where do you want me to get started? Because I can kind of go all sorts of different directions.
So Align Therapy, that's a really cool name. And it seems like you have your own technique and your own different therapies and modalities that you do to help patients get out of pain or to improve performance or to even prevent injury. Can you first kind of give me some background on how you got into this?
Yeah, so I started off with personal training. That was about 12 years ago. And from there, it was like pretty much I was into fitness. I was into bodybuilding. I was into ice hockey and just like basic, sports. I wanted to be as strong and fast as I could be, like every young person wants.
Right. From
there, it turned into kind of like my own self-discovery and research into that and starting to recognize that, hey, I could probably help other people with this and like make some coin on the side. So that was the initial beginning of it. And then from there, I wanted to get a little bit deeper than what I was, so I was recognizing that, just helping people lose fat and, gain muscle, be able to run sprints faster, like that was great. It was gratifying to a degree, but then there was this whole other realm of human out there, like most of us, that we have chronic pain or we have, whatever it is in our body that, we want to go a little bit deeper than just, get carved biceps or whatever it was. And so from there, I ended up studying massage therapy at a more clinically based massage school in Hawaii. And so traveled out there and was studying psychology at the University of Hawaii as well. And kind of just like this mesh of what's happening inside of our mind and what's happening inside of our body starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. There's such an apparent connection between how we think, how we feel, emotionally, and how we express ourselves, how we relate to the world, and how we carry this physical body of ours. And so the hands-on work and by no means, like I was talking before, like by no means I'm a talky therapist at all, but we end up talking a lot because the ideas need to land with people, that how you feel in your body is going to impact the way you carry your shoulders or the way you carry your spine or whatever it is, and so continue evolution, traveled around, kind of studied different folks, studied in Thailand for a while, went to South America, kind of just like watching people. And then came back, went to the Rolf Institute, became a certified Rolfer. And then from there, it was like still every time you learn something new, you kind of, for me, I end up kind of adding my own layer, my own spin to it. And my spin has been movement, man. It's like we find structural functionality first. Like that's the groundwork. Once you find that structural foundation, then from there, it's like, can you dance? Can you move? Can you play? Can you use your body? Because if you put all this work in the gym, to get your bicep curls and get your chiseled abs and all that stuff, great. You look great. Fantastic. But how's your volleyball? How's your dance? How's your, what do you do with yourself? Can you climb a mountain? And that's the thing that I really am far more intrigued by for my own self. Hence why I end up helping other people with that. So what the kind of term that I've coined for that is dynamic functionality. First functional, then dynamic functional.
Were there any practitioners that helped mold you along the way?
Oh man, so many folks, man. I really like Gray Cook. I really like Kelly Starrett. I really like, there's so many people. I had tremendous teachers over at the Rolf Institute. My very first teacher at massage school was fantastic. He was actually a Rolfer himself. And so it's always for me been this kind of like structural background, and as far as specific people, I dig Ido Portal. I don't know if you're familiar with his work at all.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Yeah, but like the beauty, and then even just Olympic athletes, people that move well in their bodies, they're all inspirations to me. People that smile, they're all inspirations to me. People that genuinely take advantage of their life, to me, that is an expression of their vitality. And so that's like, if you're a person that goes out and smiles every day, that means that at a nutritional level, at a physical level, things are working. So from that person, I want to hear, like, what are you doing? So many inspirations.
So you talked about in a couple of the videos on your site at aligntherapy.com, I think on your YouTube channel, which is Align Method, you gave an analogy in one of your videos about Jenga and how your body has to be in alignment for proper function and performance. Can you kind of elaborate in that theme there for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about your body as as this Jenga game, right? And so this is like, when you start off, all the blocks are lined up perfectly, right? The game is so easy. You could stack 100 pounds, probably more than that, on top of those Jenga blocks, and it's no problem, right? As soon as you start shifting those blocks, all of a sudden the game starts to get a little bit more complicated, and that shifting of the block is a pronated foot, or, like a collapsed arch, or a knee going valgus, or dropping in, or you're losing, you're hyperkyphotic in your spine or forward head, all that stuff. These are all blocks that were in place at one point, hopefully, maybe not, if you've never had that experience in your life, right. But that hopefully at some point were in place, and through the stresses of life, be it sitting in a chair too much, be it being stressed out about your business or your taxes, your car problems, or whatever it is, all this stuff starts to kind of contort this Jenga game that we're playing every single day, So, the analogy with that is like every day figuring out, where are my blocks, and how can I start to bring those blocks into a more structurally integrated position, hence the name structural integration, which is where Rolfing, and Rolfing, it's not my favorite name in the world, is the last name of Ida P. Rolf, who innovated structural integration. So structural integration is what Rolfing is. So that's kind of the analogy that I like to use sometimes.
Got it. And Rolfing is dealing a lot with the fascial planes of the body. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So Rolfing is all about connective tissue. And so when you're looking at somebody, you're looking at this fascial web, essentially. So you're wearing a blue shirt right now, V-neck. I love V-neck, man. I only do V-necks. I can't do choky collars. So pull your shirt. You don't need to, but for your listeners out there, grab the front edge of your shirt, say the left side, and we can do it together. And pull that shirt down towards your hip. Right, so kind of down at an angle, and what you'll notice if you feel into it a little bit deeper, you'll start to feel that pull impact all the way to the back side of you. Right, so this connective tissue shirt that we're living in, that is the fascial body. If you strip away everything, strip away all the bones and all the nerves and everything, except leave the fascia, we still have this perfect human form. You would totally recognize the human. And so within that fascia, it's like bustling with mechanoreceptors, it's as sensitive as the iris of the eye, it's like that space is receiving so much information in our day-to-day life. And if it's disorganized, it ends up interpreting those signals that would be, whatever it is, it's cold outside, or, I have pain, or whatever it is. It starts kind of misaligning the interpretation of those signals, which ends up stressing us out. Once again, the term of the day, integration, right? If you do not have integration is communication. If you're in a scrambled up fascial web, it is going to be very challenging for you to create communication throughout your system. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's kind of like a roundabout way of explaining. I think I was talking about Rolfing at one point.
So when it comes to Rolfing, right, that's the therapy you're using to help break up adhesions in the fascia. Essentially, when the fascia gets stuck to the tissue or to the muscle, then we have, that tugging of the shirt analogy that you gave us. So obviously, best case scenario is all of our patients or anyone that gets injured, a good Rolfing session or some good soft tissue work to break up those adhesions is going to be something that's going to accelerate healing, correct?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, working in tandem with chiropractic, I think is really important. From my perception, I think that, which is why I think it's fantastic that you seem to have a really holistic approach with your work. I think if we get too caught up in just like say like the one minor adjustment, which this is a pretty opinion based, but if you do like one minor adjustment and then say like hasta luego, for me, my experience, I feel like, in my own self, I need more than that. It's like I need to understand why are we doing the adjustment? I need to have that a little bit more communication, which is why I think having, working with the connective tissue of like what's binding to those bones is a really, really helpful system to work with. And from there, all of a sudden, adjustments come so much easier is my experience. But I'm curious on your opinion on that as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of chiropractors, they do not address the soft tissue. And again, the soft tissue, the muscles that move the bone are so important. So a lot of chiropractors are just adjusting the bones or the joints, and they're ignoring all the soft tissue. And again, it's the muscles and the tissue, muscles that are moving the bone. So if these muscles are turned off or inhibited due to pain or adhesions or whatever, you can adjust someone to the cows come home, and then that joint's not going to really regain the structural integrity it needs because those muscles that are supporting it and helping it move and giving it integrity aren't really on or facilitated.
Right. A really simple analogy for that is next time you go out camping, hopefully you guys are getting out camping from time to time because it's great for you on all sorts of levels. Next time you're out there, you're setting up your tent. Notice the pull of if you have, the string or whatever it is, the little rope, the cord, the guy wire essentially. Yep. Notice what happens if you were to crank down on one of those guy wires or one of those cords or ropes holding the tent up. It will distort the whole entire structure of that tent. You're going to have a very uncomfortable looking tent. What we have in our society, because we're getting yanked down into generally hyperkyphotic being a fancy word for our spine is pulled forward, our heads are pulling forward. We end up getting pulled into this position because we're looking at computers, because we're sitting in cars, because we're, everything. We're holding our children. Our children are in front of us. I work with a lot of like women that they're kind of, their kids are finally walking and stuff. And it's like, we got to unwind that whole entire time frame where you've been holding your child in this, certain way where you're folding your shoulder in and folding your spine over and kind of nurturing this child. Now that is you, and that it's like another analogy that I use for that is like thinking every time you're specializing in some type of sport or, holding your child, whatever it is, it's literally like you're putting on a suit. It's like you're putting on a connective tissue suit. You're holding yourself in a certain way. When you get finished with that, it is so, so important to take that suit off. Always finding that initial Jenga game. Come back to balance when you finish doing whatever it is. You go out for a road bike ride. You're contorting your body to a road bike. Right? That's not going to fit to go for a walk so well. That's not going to fit to, take a nap and lie flat on your back without a pillow. It's just not going to fit. You formed your body to something else. We got to get back to that humanness.
That makes sense. Now, I know in a couple of your videos, you talk about myofascial release kind of at home for the everyday individual. So can you talk about some of these different self-care things they can do to help get their fascia back in action?
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's my favorite subject. One of my favorite subjects. So it's the big thing that I've recognized is when I'm working with people in my clinic, it's like if they're not understanding exactly what I'm doing, then I feel like I'm failing. I feel like every time that I work with somebody, it's a lesson, or it's a class. It's like I should be coaching them along with their ship, guiding their ship, but they have to actually steer the ship themselves. So what I do is teach them how to take care of themselves. So if I have my elbow, into the insertion of their pec minor or whatever it is, it's like, cool, this is great. This is great that we're having this experience and you're able to feel deeply into that place you might have not even known was there before. But you can do this without me. That's the magic of it. It's like you need to recognize that right now, we are actually, this is a class, hopefully. And then as soon as you leave here, you can take a ball, you can take a foam roller, you can take a band, and this is all in the self-care kit that I have for sale on my website. You can take all of this stuff and you can do the exact same things that I'm doing. I've replicated everything into this little self-care package. And you don't need to necessarily have the self-care kit to do this. You can find a ball at the dog store or whatever it is, but combining the combination of tactile touch and deep pressure, and then combining that with movement, you start working all ends of the spectrum, so you're starting to get into those mechanoreceptors and the Golgi tendons and all that, like fancy terms that nobody needs to know. What you need to know is work the attachment points, right? Use slow, deep pressure, follow your intuition. If it feels good, it's probably good. If it feels painful, why is it painful? Maybe we need to work around that. And then by activating, moving your body, this is a simple technique that people pay a ton of money to receive. It's called pin and stretch. You might do pin and stretch techniques in your own practice. It's like pin and stretch. You're pinning tissue that's stuck or adhesed or agglomerated or dehydrated or whatever term you want to label it. You're pinning that tissue, and then you're asking the person to move their arm or their hip or whatever it is underneath that pin. That pin could be my hand. That pin could be a ball. Does that make sense?
So basically, you're talking about active release technique right there.
ART, man. Yeah, it's so funny when you learn all these different techniques. I've learned a little bit of ART. I've learned a little bit of so many different techniques. It's like
release.
Yeah, and you NMT or when you start getting into them, you're like, they're all kind of the same. it's like they're not all exactly the same, but it's like I've kind of come back. It's like pin and stretch, man. So I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars. Spent all this time learning all these different techniques, and I was like, move, pin and stretch, PNF. PNF being an acronym for proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. It doesn't matter what the heck it means. What it is you're starting to activate the nervous system. You're starting to incorporate the nervous system into that stretch, into that myofascial release technique, whatever it is. And so I break all that stuff down in the videos.
That makes sense. So just for the listeners at home here, pin and stretch, you're taking your muscle, right? Let's say it's your pec. You're reaching across. You're finding those adhesions in that front part of your pec muscle, and then you're opening that muscle back up and stretching it maybe against the door jamb while you hold that adhesion tight. And the whole idea is you're breaking down the scar tissue, and then you're also helping to realign that fascia and scar tissue when you bring that arm or that leg back into position. So that's really cool. And I see your Align kit here online. You got a band, you got a foam roller, you got some trigger point balls. What's the little circle mat that says Align method on it? What's that?
Circle mat with Align method on it. Oh, okay. So that's the band. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
It's to the left of the foam roller, the orange foam roller. It says Align. Maybe it's
all right. So that's the cap, right? So all of that stuff fits inside of the foam roller.
Oh, cool.
Right? So the foam roller is hollow. Okay, so this came from me, like when I go on road trips, obviously movement's a big deal to me. And so when I go on road trips, I bring a big old kettlebell, I bring bands, I bring balls, I bring foam rollers, like I bring all of this crap. It's like the car's filled up with it. It looks like I'm like a mobile physical therapy unit, and then so what I started to kind of like, originally I did it for myself. It was like, I got to consolidate this stuff.
Yeah.
So literally it was like, just finding the products, finding a foam roller that's actually hollow, and then getting the right balls. So it's different size balls as well, so it fits in all the different nooks and crannies of your body. And and then the band as well is super helpful for exercise for one thing, but also decompression of joints. And so just finding that perfect package that fits all together. You throw the caps on in the end, and then boom, you throw that underneath your seat, and you literally have a mobile physical therapy, myofascial release kit.
That's cool. That's cool. Cool. Can you tell me about the bands? I know Kelly Starrett was big on this in the Supple Leopard book. Can you just talk about how you apply it therapy-wise to your patients?
100%, yeah. So if do you do any like myofascial work in your practice?
I do some active release technique, but I do a lot with the ARP wave, which is basically using electricity to kind of do a myofascial release almost. A little different though.
I'm getting a cold laser here in the next couple weeks, so I'm curious if you have any pins on that, but that's obviously after the show.
Yeah.
So with the band, what I do with the band is essentially it's replicating if I were to decompress a joint, right? So say your shoulder is jacked up to your ear, like so many people's are. Your first ribs jacked up to your ear, and it's like you're walking around in this tensed out turtle position all day long, right? So many people are in that position. It's like they're perpetually surprised. Oh my God!
Yeah, exactly.
You're just eating breakfast. What are you so surprised about?
Yeah,
and so taking my hand, what you can do with that, what I would do with somebody in my clinic or on table or whatever it is I would decompress their shoulder. So kind of like guiding them into a more functional position. And then from there, have them move. It's not complicated stuff, you'll find that with most things that really work, it's not always that complicated, so I'll guide them into a position that feels functionally stable and then have them move through that, and the general where the trick comes in is kind of feeling like what's too much and what's too little. And that kind of just takes time to feel. But the magic of that is people can find that in themselves quite quickly. Right. Because you can right away, as soon as something feels good or not good, you can play in your eye, you can poke yourself in your eye, exactly the moment that it's not good anymore. So it's like we have these sensitive bodies, yes, but we are so much more intuitive than we give ourselves credit for. The thing is that intuition comes with practice. So that's what the kit's all about, really, is like having a medium to practice being in your skin. And so that's what I do what I have people do with the band is there's a door anchor and you attach it to a door and then you can change the different levels, like the height of it. So you could attach it to your shoulder joint, for example, pull your shoulder back. So many people are rolled forward and then move through, bring your arm up, bring your arm down, bring your arm back. You can do this on your ankle, on your knee, on your hip. You can do this anywhere. And then it also doubles as, an exercise band. So there's all sorts of stuff you can do with that.
That's very cool. Awesome. Love it. Love it. So a couple other things here. You do your line therapy exercise. So I'm just curious. I'm a big fan of, or I like Eric Goodman's work. He does foundation training, and it kind of seems like what you're doing is very much in sync with that. Is that correct or no?
It's so ridiculously similar.
Yeah. So can you kind of compare and contrast and just talk about, some of the compound movements, what exercises you're doing?
Yeah. So foundation, he calls it the founder. Right. So one of the things, and a founder essentially is like, it's almost like a pseudo snatch position. Right. And so what you'll see with all of these different things is like, you'll start. Yeah, right. Exactly. You're nailing it. Yeah. And so you'll see this in yoga. You'll see this in Pilates. You'll see this, you see this in all these different mediums in Olympic lifting. And it's like, it's tough to say who does who because it's like it all came from like thousands of years ago. Now we're finally bringing it out. It's like our bodies still need this. Imagine that. And so what the founder is you're bringing your arms up over your head and you're maintaining. When you bring your arms up over your head, it forces your spine into a little bit of what's called extension. Flexion being going forward, extension being coming back, right? Oftentimes, again, the hyperkyphosis word, fun word to say, you end up, a lot of people being stuck in that position because our life is in front of us, right? We don't end up exploring that space behind our backs. So it's essentially turned off, right? And that's the thing is like, we need to start expressing our fullest body map. We need to start feeling into the posterior side of our shoulder, feel into our rhomboids, feel into our, everything in the backside there. We just don't have a relationship with it because it's behind us. I got this work to do. I got this girlfriend. Like I got things in front of me right now. Like what am I going to do with my, my multifidus? What the heck is that? Who cares? And so what that does is it starts to bring your arms back and starts to contract the musculature, the intrinsic muscles around that thoracic spine. And then what you need to do as you're doing that, as your arms are up over your head, is you're maintaining a neutral spine, which it's so much easier to just watch the videos, so get on to the, linetherapy.com website. You can find all this stuff. And because explaining it's just like, it's a little bit much, but maintaining neutral spine, keeping the knees wide, keeping the feet facing straight-ish, keeping arch support in the feet, just going down the checklist in your body and saying, is everything tight, compressed, engaged? Because we end up being chronically disengaged through our posterior side throughout the day. So this is just a really like simple practice to kind of re-engage that. Where I start to veer off down the rabbit hole is dynamic movement. Right. So I would say, the founder position is a very functional position.
Right.
Where I go beyond that is like, great, cool. Founder's not that sexy. So I care about sex appeal, man. Like I want to have fun. I want to move.
Keep it sexy. Yeah, no doubt.
You got to keep it sexy. So that's the thing. Like people want to be sexy. It's like when you're in a gym, it's like, what are you working out for? a part of that is like you want to be kind of attractive to the opposite sex. You want to be attractive to yourself. You want to be able to express yourself in a more fantastic, dynamic way. Hopefully, if you don't want that, that's fine. Stick to bicep curls and like nothing else. It's great. But going beyond that, that's when it starts to get fun. And that's, when I mentioned, I don't want to go too deep into this because it can get, it's all analogy, so it's not too big a deal, but expanding your body map, expanding your sensory awareness of yourself. And you see me in the video, your listeners can't see me, but I'm very like all over the place as I'm talking, so expanding your awareness of the back side of you, of the left side of you, the right side of you, expanding all of your movement patterns, because if you don't explore them, they will not be yours. Thinking about every movement that you do, and are you rolling on a ball right now or something?
I'm just sitting back and forth here, standing.
Awesome, cool, yeah. So you can see.
I'm making sure I'm making good Jenga blocks.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I love it. So I have the foam roller here, and I have the ball and all that stuff. So I keep all this stuff underneath me as I'm doing interviews. Right. So while I'm standing here, I'm standing up on a foam roller. I'm rolling my foot around on the ball. It's like keeping that motor map exploratory, have fun in your body, because every moment of the day, we are expanding our potential of movement. We are expanding our potential of physical expression. Most of us forget that, and so back to the web analogy, the more intricate you make your web, the more potential of communication cross bridges there are in that web. So it's like if you've ever learned a type of dance, breakdancing is a great one. It's like you start off, you learn the 6-step. As soon as you learn the 6-step, all of a sudden you start to be able to link that into other stuff. Now I'm doing a CC, all these different things. You see what is on YouTube, but you start linking all these movements together where at first it was so arbitrary and weird. It was just like, it felt like it's like total system malfunction, failing, but once you start to connect those cross bridges, and you need a fancy word, you can call this myelination, or you can call this connecting the synapses or whatever you want to call it. It's like once you start to make those bridges combine, your potential of sophistication of movement and self-expression exponentially increases. Is that too heady?
No, that totally makes sense.
All right, cool. Yeah, so that's I don't know what I started off talking about, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
So can you break down some of the resistance training lifts that you do? I see, you do a lot with like lunges. It seems like you do a lot with kettlebells. So so the average person can, think of exercises that you're doing and kind of, put an image to it in their head. What kind of movement patterns are you doing?
Okay, so starting off, so if you ever come actually like into my office, which you're invited to come up to Bend, Oregon anytime you want, but if you ever come in there, I have some pretty strange stuff. I have gymnastic rings hanging off the ceiling. I have a deadlift bar or a barbell with like big bumper plates. I have stall bars on the walls. The stall bars are like these, you see them in like old gymnasiums where it's like little walls, horizontal. It's like a ladder. It's connected to the wall essentially. Do all sorts of fun stuff with that. But as far as resistance training, what I start off with people is deadlifts, squats. Deadlift, I officially changed the name, not yet, haven't trademarked it, but I changed the name of deadlift because it intimidates people. You get a yogi and you're like, I want you to do deadlifts because you're too freaking flexible. They're like, oh, no, never. They're like,
right.
All right, I'm going to change the name to pick stuff up. You were going to learn to functionally pick stuff up, and that's the thing. Like, we don't know how to pick stuff up. That's messed up. We never learned how to functionally pick something heavy off of the ground. That's a huge, huge deal. When we look at how much that we're spending in healthcare, and like disc herniations, like that's a preventable issue, 100%. If you have that movement sophistication in your body, then you're not going to blow a disc because you know how to move as strong as you possibly could want without blowing anything out because you've trained yourself. So I think deadlifts, compound movements is generally all I'm going to do. Sometimes I'll do specific isolation exercises if there's specific muscles that are just completely disengaged. And I use like e-stim and some stuff, some kind of fun tools like that as well. So I'll hook some e-stim pads up to people and have them activate those muscles and kind of just bring awareness to those areas. But deadlifts, squats, overhead presses, if they have the shoulder range of motion for it, pretty much what I'm going to be doing in my actual office. And then with kettlebells, I love kettlebells because it links dynamic swinging, so all of a sudden momentum becomes a part of the equation. So if you figured out the deadlift, start swinging a kettlebell. So it's this kind of like tier, right? So it's just like, can you pick something up? All right, cool. Can you swing something, right? Now from there, it's like, all right, cool. Can you swing at different angles? Right. All right. From there, can you jump, do some plyometrics and jump and land and catch yourself and have, again, that motor mapping, that sophistication to catch yourself. So it's always this stacking of layers, essentially, is what I'm doing. If someone's already a high level athlete, then we're going to get straight to high level activities. If it's the very, very beginning, then we're not going to go too much further than deadlift. But deadlift, that's something that's high level forever. We should always be deadlifting. We should always be squatting, in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember when I used to do a lot of personal training over 10 years ago, one of the things I started out with patients is I would get them over there and we just say, hey, we're going to do sits today. And it was amazing. When I would say squats, their form would go to hell. But when I would say, hey, we're going to just sit in this chair, it was amazing how their brain was just like connected to doing the form appropriately. So kind of the same thing. Pick stuff up, right? AKA deadlifts. And their brain just kind of goes into that different form. And I know on that note, picking stuff up, one of the things that Eric Goodman has kind of coined or really put out there in the mainstream that I use a lot with my patients from a structural side is the term hinging versus bending. I think that's one of the big issues that most people have when they're not picking stuff up correctly or sitting correctly. Yes. They're bending more versus hinging more. So can you talk about what's happening with bending versus hinging? Can you elaborate, people at home?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, for folks at home, do this with yourself, like have somebody watch you. Like I'm a weirdo. So I'll videotape myself, or I have like mirrors, and a lot of really fantastic mediums of body work, like Feldenkrais method and such, came from kooky people, looking at themselves in the mirror, videotaping themselves, essentially like being their own therapist. So that's what I encourage my clients and just people of the world in general to do. Be your own therapist, get intrigued by your body, really get fascinated by it and learn about it. So come down, and imagine you're picking up, say a 200-pound or get yourself a barbell, pick that thing up. If your initial inclination is to hinge at your spine, then you are putting unnecessary stress on your spine. Your vertebra is not built to sustain a load like that, right? It's built to maintain that neutrality as you're coming down. And hinging at the hips allows you to load that weight into where it's meant to be loaded. Your butt's the strongest set of muscles you got in your body. So when you're coming down and loading up that hinge, the hinge being the hip, you're actually stretching out those gluteal muscles. As you come down through there, you need to have the strength and the activation to pull yourself up from that hinge. That's the only safe way to pick up something heavy, and then, it's not just something heavy, it's like, it's you start digging that path over years and years and years of that type of movement. Eventually you pick up the wrong paperclip and boom, disc herniation. When you come down, it's that forward flexion and then add a little torsion to it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful recipe for a serious, serious injury. And so figuring out how can I maintain that core support, and core is such a weird word, because we have, again, all these connotations towards what it is. So I call it the corset, because corset's like, it's much more specific. It's like transverse abdominis, essentially. Transverse abdominis being that muscle that literally, just think of it as a corset. It's your corset muscle underneath your abs. And so as you're coming down, maintaining that stabilization through the midsection, stacking the spine the way it's meant to be stacked, hinging at the hips, and then keeping the knees wide, which actually loads what Kelly Stark calls this torque in the hips. So you're creating this rotational force in the hips, essentially taking all of the slack out of the hip. So you don't want a loose, slacked out joint if you're going to load a few hundred pounds onto it, or any amount of weight into it. So you want to take the tension out of that, or take the slack out of that space, find a stack between your knees and your feet, and come down and hinging at that hip. And that's going to be a safe way to load any amount of weight. Everyone should be able to pick up as much weight as they possibly can, or more than that, not actually pick it up off the ground, but pull on it and not hurt themselves. If you cannot do that, then you are missing a serious, serious human function.
Got it. So Tell me about your workout routine. What are the key movement patterns or the key exercises that you're doing on a day in, day out basis?
Cool. So I'm starting to add more of this into the YouTube channel of actually like, what do you actually do, Aaron? So what I do heavy deadlifts. I do heavy squats. I do front squats predominantly because I want to maintain that neutral spine. Because I haven't been a very like exceptional athlete. Like growing up, I was into bodybuilding, which screwed me, man. Like it was such a bad idea, because I started breaking down my system. And I was jacked. I was like, 225 pounds at like 16 years old. It was ridiculous, but I wasn't so good at an athlete. You like put somebody in front of me, I'll knock them on their butt, but if it gets any more complicated than that, it's going to start looking mechanical, and so what ended up happening is I ended up blowing out both my shoulders. I ended up dislocating my ankle. Your body will start to deconstruct if you exercise that way, and so when I put myself into these athletic situations, be it rock climbing, be it surfing, be it, whatever it is, like all of a sudden you got to move with the wave, the wave metaphoric for life. You got to be able to move with whatever comes at you, so figuring out, start off with that strong foundation. So I do my heavy lifts, my heavy compound lifts. I do heavy kettlebell swings, so I'll do like snatches, essentially kettlebells up over my head, and then maintaining that kettlebell up over my head, I'll come down and do some squats. All of this stuff is rehabilitory for me. I consider it all to be rehabilitory because I'm unwinding that forward spine posture that got imposed upon me from sitting in high school, sitting in college, sitting in my car, all this whole, whatever, not feeling like I'm good enough or whatever it is. It's like, it starts to fold you forward. So my workout ends up looking kind of like rehabilitory, but like kind of like heavier than that. Or, it's like, well, he's like powerlifting, but it's like in my mind, it's very intentional. And then from there, I dance a lot, man. So it's like in between, if you look at somebody in a gym, it's like, I'm kind of a freak in a gym. It's people at first were a little bit like, what the heck is that guy? Now they're like very interested. I'm like teaching classes about it. So it's been a good transition. But in between sets, you don't need to just go down and sit down in some crummy position. You can, from there, it's like explore a full range of motion in your body. Go for a jog, go do some jumping jacks or whatever you want to do. What I end up doing is kind of like capoeira, which is a type of like Brazilian martial arts.
Yeah,
It's like dance fighting essentially.
Yeah.
So I do some like capoeira techniques. I do some breakdancing techniques. I do a lot of handstands. Everything that I do inside the gym, it's very brief. I'm in the gym maybe for 30 minutes max. And, it's very intentional. I'll pick up heavy stuff and move it. And then I dance essentially.
I love it. That makes sense. You got all these fancy lingo terms. I'm like, you must be a break dancer.
Right.
That's great. So talk to me more about some of these overhead lifts with a squat. I've always found these very difficult to do. Can you talk about kind of what these are doing and the alignment, and then you're pressing overhead maybe with that kettlebell, and then you're going into a squat position?
Yeah, they're difficult because generally speaking, our shoulder girdle has been formed forward. It's like how many people do you know that hang every day? Rock climbers, gymnasts. Who else? Right. So that's the thing. It's like our shoulders are built to hang, it's like it's a fancy term, brachiation, is our shoulders are completely built to brachiate or to hang on stuff, and so what ends up happening with most of our life is we end up being rolled forward into this position as we write our notes, as we're working on the computer, whatever it is. And like I said, it's getting back to that fascial shirt thing. We start developing tissue around the spaces that we're using a lot, and then we end up losing or missing that range of motion that's so essential to doing things like hanging off of a tree limb, and so what I've been doing again is it's like heavy lifting, but rehabilitory, it's getting those motions back, and so what I'll use, something super helpful, is doing some myofascial release techniques. So like doing the band, getting the band in the front of your shoulder, pulling that back into a strong, stable position, rotating your thumb backward. Again, this stuff's hard to explain, but rotating your thumb backward, putting that shoulder again in this most stable position, which is in that external rotation above your head, and just slowly exploring it. You're not going to get it on day one. You're just not. It's a slow change. You look at like our connective tissue gets completely relayed out every 7 months, right? So it's like, this might take you a little bit of time, It's not just boom, today we got it, but it's an every single day thing. Am I rolling my shoulders forward too much today? Stop. Don't do it. It's like, did I give myself 30 minutes of rehab or prehab or whatever you want to call it? If you didn't, you got 20 minutes. You got 15 minutes. It doesn't take a lot. It's just those little titrations. It's like that little bit every single day. It starts to compound. The compound effect. Albert Einstein called the compound effect, like, one of the wonders of the world, right? Because it's like those little steps every single day. It doesn't look like much, and then all of a sudden you're like, whatever, you're ruling the world. It usually takes a little bit of time, but it's that willingness to keep on going. And that's the big thing. Is like, if you can't do it today, it's okay. Just keep trying.
That's great. So if we're trying to get that shoulder girdle back, maybe just some good hanging.
Hang. Yeah, 100%. Totally. And so there's different types of hanging, right? There's passive hanging. There's dynamic hanging. There's, this, I would say if you have shoulder injuries, probably don't passive hang right away. Passive hanging being not active. So it's not activating your shoulder girdle, not activating your rhomboids, not activating that line that's kind of engaging the shoulder to kind of keep it connected to your body. Start off with a little bit more active hanging, where you're actually, rotating that arm out and really engaging your midsection and really, really cinching that shoulder in, but while maintaining a hang, and also have a partner help you out, have a step to step on, something that is like, because this could be a dangerous thing. It wouldn't be dangerous if we did this our whole life. This would be no big deal at all. Right? You look at a kid in a jungle gym and he is passive, swinging, dynamic all over the place, and he's fine. Most adults look at that. When you look at an adult get on a jungle gym, they're very active, right? They engage the biceps and they engage the shoulders, right? And they're protecting themselves. And that's good it's super important, but it's good to have all that full range of motion, and the reason that those kids are able to do that, they haven't junked up their shoulders yet. It's that day in, day out, incorrect, dysfunctional movement or lack thereof that ends up just junking our joints up, man. And then we go and we like, I'm an athlete because I watch YouTube videos of people like bombing off of mountains. It's like, dude, you're not an athlete anymore. Like, you had the potential to be an athlete, but now you need some serious prehab before you put yourself into a vulnerable position like a potential fall. And that's like, you get like fall risk with older folks. It's like, if at any point in your human experience, going down to the ground is a scary, dangerous thing, man, the human body is not meant for that. It's like, if you spent your whole entire life, go to Japan, and look at fall risk out there. I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist. It's like, because they've grown up, we eat on the floor, we sleep on the floor. It's getting up, standing up and sitting down and standing up and sitting down off of the floor activates this whole entire full range of motion through our muscles that we don't get when we sit in these crappy chairs. The chair, it's like chair is death. It's like, and the chair isn't even a big deal. It's like, it's just the lack of movement is the big thing. We need to express ourselves to the fullest potential of movement as often as possible if we want to live happy, expressive lives.
Great. Love that. So basically what I'm hearing is hang for your shoulder health, lunges, front squats to really get those erector, that extension muscles. So we have good posture, good deadlifts or pick stuff up. And good sits or squats. Yeah. Does that sound about right, that we should have kind of as our core part of our routine? Anything else you want to add to it?
It sounds right, and I would go a step beyond sits and go deep squats, third world squat. And this is like, we have this illusion that like, oh, that's bad for the knees. This is not bad for the knees. It's like you go to other countries, it's like you go to a third world country, they're not dealing with things like hip replacements, right? It's like, how is it possible that we have the best medicine on earth accessible to us, and we're still the most unhealthy country in the world? I mean, we might not be the most unhealthy country in the world, but it's pretty low. It's like, how is that possible that we have everything at the same time we're dealing with the most problems? And what that is it's like the disease of affluence, right? It's like, because we don't need to do anything, our bodies are like, great, I'm not doing anything.
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense.
Oh man, so much. So it's like every day exploring your range of motion. If all you do is sit to 90 degrees, great. Tomorrow, sit to 86 degrees. See what that's like. The next day, let's do 84. And it's like gradually, you're going to be down to 35 degrees or whatever. I don't know. I'm not so great with math, but you're going to be down there quick. It's just like a matter of every day you got to stack that up. You got to teach your body. You got to, recognize that your body is a humble servant, right? And it does exactly what you ask of it and no more, right? And then that's the big thing. It's like we think that we can, like have what was the term, like have a free lunch or whatever it is. There's no such thing as a free lunch, man.
Right.
If you didn't do anything, good luck with progress, right? Good luck with heart disease. Good luck with all the stuff that is to come. If you didn't move, I couldn't imagine anything but failure in the body. And again, and this is kind of like, I don't want to get too fire and brimstone-y, because nobody likes that. But I don't mean it in that way at all. I mean, moving is like, it's a gift. It's like, we just need to start recognizing that every moment is a gift. Take full advantage of it. Make sense?
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Can you kind of connect nutrition to healthy movement and feeling good and being good and not, getting injured and preventing injury? A lot of physical therapists, chiropractors, osteopaths, personal trainers, a lot don't really make the connection to diet and the nutrients and reducing inflammation. Can you connect how important diet and nutrition is to being healthy from a physical perspective?
Yeah, sure, man. And so diet isn't my niche. I read a ton about it. I'm very, very fascinated by it, but it's not like it's not something that I try to speak with too much authority on. But in general, I tinker with it all the time, man. It's like that's my, if I had any message in regards to nutrition and diet, I would say get as much as you can from whole foods, because recognizing that food is information, just like movement is information, right? So imagine like a book. If someone gave you a book and it's all of a sudden, say they ripped out like chapter 3, chapter 8, chapter 15, and chapter 19, right? And they didn't tell you, and they give you that book and you read the book, right? And you're like, I didn't read, it was a cool book, it had some cool words, flashy cover, that was cool, but like, I didn't really get it, right? That is hydrogenated oil. That is processed food. That is supplements that aren't assimilatable in your body. That is all of this stuff that, I'm not saying supplements are not assimilatable. I'm saying these supplements that are not assimilatable in your body. It's like, you're not what you eat, you are what you assimilate. I think you said that, or I got that from you. So it's like recognizing, it's like the more that we can go whole foods, organic foods, support our local farmers, because it's like the fate of the world is kind of dependent upon that, I believe. It's like recognizing that our money is votes. It's like who you vote for president. Like, I'm not sure how important that is. I can tell you for a fact how important where our money goes is. So recognizing that everything that you purchase, you are voting for that product. You are voting for that organic, local farmer that has a smile on his face, or you are voting for that, pesticide-ridden GMO, like polluting the environment, pouring sludge into the rivers and destroying our children guy. It's like, and it's all to save you what, 40 cents? So my perception of nutrition is quite holistic, as you'd probably expect. So it's really like recognizing that the food that our body craves and loves and will assimilate the best is the stuff that comes straight out of the ground and that we haven't tampered with. And then as far as like diets and nutrition, all that stuff go, I say tinker. That's the best thing you can do, because, it's like when the Atkins came out, it's like, cool, Atkins, when someone finds some type of nutritional plan that worked for them, they're going to run up to the top of a mountaintop and scream to the world, this is it, this is the final one. So it's like, for you to just take that one person because they're so excited about it, I would take that person as information, but not fact. So it's like, play right now what I'm tinkering with, because it seems like, like paleo and, like reducing sugar and reducing like white stuff in general. That's something that I absolutely believe in that. Like, don't put white crap in your body generally, unless it's coconut. but playing with adding more fat into the body, playing with, when we're putting different types of macronutrients into our system. If you eat a bunch of sugar for breakfast, you're probably gonna be pretty sleepy in a minute, and then you're gonna need coffee, and then you're gonna need like a Red Bull, and then you're gonna need whatever it is. So that's my nutrition advice in relation to the body is eat natural, eat organic, eat whole foods, experiment, see what works for you, clean up your palate, clean up your system enough that you can actually recognize how food impacts you. If you have a dirty system, you're not going to know what's what. You're not a controlled experiment anymore because there's so much crap streaming through your system. So clean things up and then just tinker. Add a bunch of fat in your body, see what happens. Add a bunch of white sugar in your body, see what happens. Explore it. That's my thought.
Awesome. Love it. So I kind of stole in these last two questions that I asked my guests. I stole one from Mike Mutzel and the other one from Dave Asprey. So first question, here's Mutzel's question.
Ready.
If you were stuck on a desert island, what herb would you bring with yourself? You had one herb.
Man, I've been playing, can I say, I've been tinkering with ashwagandha recently, which ashwagandha is a mushroom technically, I believe, right? Is it
It's technically a nightshade.
All right, cool. So I've been tinkering with that recently. That's what I've been really excited about. And, something I'm curious about, actually, I'm curious on your opinion on this, which you don't need to answer right now. But, I take like the little capsules of ashwagandha and I feel pretty good after that. And then my buddy he's got this local nut butter called Gem Butter. It's awesome, delicious stuff. And he's like really into all this, supplements and all that. And he hit me with like a big old handful of ashwagandha the other day. And oh man, I felt phenomenal afterwards. So
stuff is good.
It's good.
It is. It's actually Sanskrit for to impart the strength of the horse. So cool. That's pretty cool. I mean, you can't get much better than that.
Horse energy, man. You can't beat that.
Yes. My other guy.
But that's something that changes for me a lot too. Like I said, I'm always experimenting with stuff. So currently that's what I would say. Ask me in like maybe 2 months, I'll probably have a different answer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, and just for the listeners, ashwagandha is a really powerful adaptogenic herb to help with vitality and immune function and strength. My other podcast interview I had this morning with Dr. Will Cole, he said milk thistle, which is a common liver tonic. And I said, hey, you're going to be drinking on this desert island? What's up with that?
Yeah, right. I want to be stimulated, man.
I want to be. So I was making fun of him, but that's cool. So we got ashwagandha. And then now, what are the three most powerful things? There's three things if you could only tell one person to do to help improve their health.
Drink good water. So if you got chlorine in your water, stop. Get a good filter. I do spring water, man. Get on Daniel Vitalis has a pretty cool site. I forget what his spring website is called right now, but we could look it up afterwards or whatever. But get spring water if you can. Think it's like your water will be your blood. It's a big
it's true.
Deal. If you're running chlorine through your system, you're running anything that ends inside, like eating pesticides and all that stuff, or runoff from crummy farms or whatever it is. It's like side means death. Antibiotics. Oh, anti-life. Oh, don't do that. It's just like get good water. The next thing, sleep. You got to sleep like a mofo, man. It's if we are not sleeping well, then that's a serious issue, because that's when our body is developing. We think that we get strong when we are exercising. Exercise is catabolic. We're breaking our bodies down. What permits that strength is the time between the sheets. And so it's like get to sleep between 10 and 2. Is something, I would add on that. I have like a ceremony before I go to bed. So I'll have like my little magnesium spray thing, and I have like an earthing sheet, which that's like a totally separate subject. And,
nice.
I black out the whole entire room. It's like I have my little like end of the night traditions. It's just like, Make it be ceremonial. Really get after it. We have all these traditions on how to get upregulated or how to amp ourselves up. We don't have so much with how to downregulate. So I would say absolutely embrace downregulation. Rest when you need to rest. It's not always the right decision to go to the gym to get yourself up, right? Take naps throughout the day. Cut out coffee. Maybe not, I shouldn't say cut out coffee. I would say cut out the necessity for coffee through rest. Cut out the necessity for whatever stimulant through rest. And then you can play with stimulants, right? And the last one, I would say a hybrid of, I would say dynamically squat, right? So squat, follow all the functionality guidelines, and then from there, get dynamic with it and play. Dance. I would say dance squat. When you're on the dance floor, get down on the ground, get low, move through your full range of motion, learn back bends, just explore, so I wouldn't say there's one exercise because that's just one range of motion. I would say dance, express, move, and pick heavy stuff up functionally.
Pick heavy stuff up functionally. I love it. Well, I appreciate your energy here, Aaron.
Thank
really
you.
Good. I think we covered the gamut. Spend more time in the sheets. Do a little dance squat. Just make sure you have the little collars on the edge of the barbell so you don't have the weights flying everywhere when you're squatting down. And then ashwagandha. Cool. All right. Awesome. Thanks so much, Aaron. Anything else you want to add for the listeners about how they can find you or your website, your info, Facebook, etc.?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Everyone can find anything about me on aligntherapy.com, ALIGN therapy.com. And from there's links to everything. I can give you the Twitter handles, all that stuff, but you'll find it all there. So yeah, that's all I have.
You also have a great podcast too.
Oh man, thank you so much for mentioning that. Yeah, I got so excited about the squat thrust and all that stuff. Movement Medicine Podcast, or I interview phenomenal people like the good doctor here on the show, and we kind of have this conversation, but I do a lot less talking. Sometimes I do more talking than I should probably.
Love it. Awesome, Aaron. Well, hey, it was great. We'll have you back on the show sometime soon. A lot of great information. Everyone's going to have to listen to the podcast twice.
All right, cool, man. I appreciate it. See you soon.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com/question. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.